If you grew up in the 1960s, you carry memories the internet generation will never understand. A world where summer lasted forever, where a dime actually bought something, and where the whole neighborhood was your playground. Today, we are going back to the sounds, the smells, and the little daily rituals that shaped an entire generation. Some of these will make you smile. A few might sting a little, and at least one will have you saying, "I completely forgot about that." Let's find out how many you remember. The milkman knew your family by name. Before dawn, while the house was still quiet, you would hear the clink of glass on the porch. The milkman had come. Cold bottles with cream floating at the top, left in a small insulated box by the door, and the empties taken away without a word. He knew your family, knew your order, and if your mother needed extra butter, she just left a note in the box. Milk did not come from a store shelf. It came from a man you trusted, on a schedule you could set your clock by, drinking straight from the garden hose. Nobody went inside for water. On a blazing July afternoon, you grabbed the hose, let it run until the hot rubber taste cleared, then drank until your stomach hurt. Was it filtered? No. Did anyone care? Also no. That warm plastic flavor is burned into the memory of every kid who ran wild in the 60s. Today, we hand children bottled spring water with electrolytes. Back then, the hose was hydration, entertainment, and on a good day, a weapon in the world's greatest water fight. One telephone for the entire house. There was one phone. It hung on the kitchen wall or sat in the hallway. It had a rotary dial, and it belonged to everyone, which really meant it belonged to your parents. Dialing a number full of nines took half a minute, and if you slipped, you started over from the beginning. Privacy meant stretching the cord as far around the corner as it would go, while your little brother listened anyway. And you memorized every number that mattered, because there was nowhere to store them except your own head. 3 channels and a pair of rabbit ears. 3 channels. That was the entire television universe, and switching between them was your job. Dad said change it over, and you got up, walked to the set, and turned a heavy dial that landed with a satisfying clunk. If the picture rolled, you adjusted the rabbit ears, and if that failed, someone wrapped them in aluminum foil like it was science. The strange part is that nobody complained. When there are only 3 choices, you learn to love whatever is on. Testing. TV tubes at the drugstore. When the television died, you did not throw it away. Dad opened the back panel, pulled out the vacuum tubes, and carried them to the drugstore, where a big humming machine tested each one. You found the dead tube, bought a replacement from the rack below the tester, and brought the TV back to life for a couple of dollars. Repair was normal. Replacement was the last resort. Try explaining that to a generation that upgrades a perfectly working phone every 2 years. Saturday morning. Cartoons were sacred. Cartoons were not available on demand. They were available on Saturday morning, and that was it. So you woke up before your parents, poured a bowl of sugary cereal, sat cross-legged in front of the console, and watched until noon in your pajamas. Miss it, and you waited 7 days. That scarcity made it precious. Ask anyone who grew up back then, and they can still hum the theme songs, because those few hours were the highlight of the entire week. Metal lunchboxes and the doomed thermos. Your lunchbox said everything about you. Cowboys, astronauts, cartoon heroes, all stamped into painted steel with a matching thermos inside. And that thermos was lined with glass, which meant it was living on borrowed time. One drop on the playground, and you heard the sad rattle of broken glass swimming in your milk. Everyone knew that sound. Everyone made that face. And on Monday, you carried the same dented box right back to school, because that box was your identity. Penny candy was a serious decision. A nickel made you rich at the corner store. You stood at the glass case like an investor studying the market. Wax bottles with sweet juice inside. Candy cigarettes you could pretend to smoke, because somehow that was perfectly fine in 1964. Jawbreakers that lasted an entire afternoon. Bazooka gum with a tiny comic tucked in the wrapper. The store owner waited patiently while you counted pennies into his palm, and you walked out with a small brown bag of pure happiness. Chasing the ice cream truck. You heard it before you saw it. That tinny music floating in from 2 streets away triggered a full neighborhood emergency. Kids scattered in every direction, screaming for mothers, digging through couch cushions, begging for a dime. Then came the sprint, barefoot on hot pavement, waving your arms so the driver would stop. A bomb pop on a summer evening was worth every blister on your feet. No app, no delivery window, just music, luck, and raw speed. Quick question before we keep going. What was your ice cream truck order? Drop it in the comments because everyone remembers theirs. And if this video is taking you back, hit subscribe right now. The second half has memories almost nobody talks about anymore. Baseball cards. In the bicycle spoke. Baseball cards came with a flat stick of pink bubble gum that could crack a tooth. And the cards themselves were currency. You traded them, flipped them against walls, and argued over them like stockbrokers. But the best use. Clip a card to your bike frame with a clothespin so it slapped against the spokes, and suddenly your bicycle sounded like a motorcycle. Yes, kids of the 60s turned future collector items worth thousands into engine noise. Nobody regrets it. Well, almost nobody. The skate key around your neck. Roller skates did not come with boots. They were steel frames that clamped onto your regular shoes, and they were useless without the skate key. A small metal tool you wore on a string around your neck like treasure. Tighten the clamps, adjust the length, and off you went down a bumpy sidewalk on steel wheels that sent every crack straight into your teeth. Lose the key, and your afternoon was over. Kids guarded that little key with their lives. Playgrounds built like obstacle courses. The playground was steel, and the ground beneath it was asphalt or packed dirt. Slides towered 10 feet high and turned into frying pans by noon, hot enough to brand the back of your legs. The merry-go-round spun until somebody flew off, which was honestly the goal. Monkey bars had no soft landing waiting below. You fell, you cried for a minute, you climbed back up. It sounds reckless now, but that playground taught an entire generation how to take a hit and keep going. A transistor radio under your pillow. The transistor radio was freedom you could hold in one hand. At night, you slipped the little earpiece in, hid under the covers, and listened to top 40 stations after lights out while your parents assumed you were asleep. During the day, it rode along in your bike basket or shirt pocket, crackling out ball games and the newest hits. It was your first private soundtrack, powered by a 9-volt battery, and it made you feel connected to a much bigger world. Stacking 45s. On the record player, music came on small vinyl discs with big holes, and every kid owned a stack. You loaded 5 or 6 45s onto the spindle, and the player dropped them one at a time with a clack that still lives somewhere in your memory. The hit song on one side, a mystery on the flip side, and sometimes the flip side turned out better. Saving up for a new single, carrying it home like glass, playing it until the grooves wore flat. That was how you loved a song. Ordering treasure from comic book aid. The back pages of comic books were full of miracles. Sea monkeys, a whole smiling family of them for about $1. X-ray glasses that promised to see through anything. 100 toy soldiers packed in a footlocker. You mailed your allowance in an envelope and waited 6 to 8 weeks checking the mailbox daily. What arrived was always smaller and sadder than the drawing. Brine shrimp instead of sea people, and somehow the disappointment never stopped anyone from ordering again. Be honest, what did you fall for? Tell me below. The sting of Mercurochrome. Every scraped knee ended the same way. Your mother pulled out a little bottle of Mercurochrome, painted the wound bright reddish-orange, and blew on it while you howled. Those stained knees were practically a uniform in every neighborhood. The stuff actually contained mercury, which is why it eventually vanished from shelves. Nobody knew, nobody asked. You got a kiss, maybe a bandage, and you were sent right back outside, glowing orange and completely fine. Returning bottles for candy money. Empty soda bottles were money lying around waiting to be claimed. 2 cents for the small ones, a nickel for the big quarts in some places. Smart kids patrolled ditches, ball fields, and construction sites, loading a wagon with dusty glass. Then you hauled it all to the store, cashed in, and immediately spent the profits on candy at the same counter. It was recycling before recycling had a name, and it was the first business venture half of America ever ran. Home by the streetlights. Summer had one rule: be home when the streetlights come on. Beyond that, you were free. Parents had no idea where you were for 8 hours at a stretch, and no way to check. You roamed on bikes, built forts, explored creeks, and settled your own arguments without a referee. When those lights flickered on at dusk, kids peeled off toward home in every direction like it was choreographed. Nobody had a phone. Everybody had a curfew. And somehow, it worked. The Sunday drive to nowhere. Gas cost about 30 cents a gallon. So on Sunday afternoons, the whole family piled into the car to drive absolutely nowhere. Windows down, radio on, kids loose in the back seat since seat belts were mostly decoration. At the filling station, a man in uniform pumped the gas, wiped the windshield, and checked the oil without being asked. Maybe you stopped for soft ice cream on the way home. The drive was never about arriving. The drive was the whole point. The Sears Wish Book. Every fall it landed like a holiday of its own. The Sears Christmas Wish Book, hundreds of pages thick. Kids went straight to the toy section and studied it like scripture, circling dreams with a crayon, folding corners, leaving heavy hints on the kitchen table. Half the fun of Christmas happened in those weeks of wishing. You did not get everything you circled. You maybe got one thing, and that one thing, unwrapped in December, felt bigger than the entire catalog. So there they are, the memories that built a generation. Running through all of them is one common thread. Life moved slower, things were simpler, and kids were freer, and everyone who lived it knows exactly how rare that was. Now it is your turn. Which memory hit you the hardest? And what did I leave out? Because I know there are dozens more. Drop your story in the comments. Subscribe for more trips back in time, and share this with someone who was there. They will thank you for it. See you in the next one.